The heat pressed down on Ayuthya's river docks, thick and wet, smelling of mud, fish, and fermented spices. Chatri shifted the sacks of rice onto the barge, muscles coiling smoothly beneath sun-darkened skin. His movements were economical, powerful, born of long practice, both in labour and in something else, something buried deep. He ignored the boisterous shouts of the other dockworkers, the merchants haggling nearby. Solitude was his shield, cynicism his armour. What was the point of engaging? Life, he'd learned harshly, was a current that dragged you under eventually, no matter how strong you swam. Honour was a luxury, loyalty a fool's game. He'd played it once in the gleaming corridors of the Grand Palace and paid the price in disgrace. Now he just survived. He wiped sweat from his brow with the back of a calloused hand, his eyes, sharp and habitually observant, scanning the bustling scene. They snagged for a moment on a young woman standing near a stall selling lotus flowers for the nearby temple. She was dressed simply, like any local villager, in a plain cotton cint and blouse, her dark hair tied back neatly. Yet there was an unconscious grace in her posture, a quiet dignity in her gaze as she surveyed the chaotic river life that seemed out of place. He'd seen her around occasionally, always alone, or sometimes with Pim, the cheerful, gossipy fruit vendor. Marley, Pim called her, a simple name for a seemingly simple woman. Chatri grunted inwardly. Appearances meant nothing. He turned back to his work. Later, as the afternoon sun began its slow descent, painting the Chow Phraya River in hues of orange and gold, a sudden commotion erupted near the temple supply stalls. Not the usual drunken brawl or market squabble. This was different, sharper, more focused. Chatri's head snapped up. He saw Marley backing away, her eyes wide with fear, from three men. They weren't dockside toughs, they moved with a coordinated menace, their clothes rough but their bearing professional, ruthless. One lunged, grabbing for her arm, a flicker of something old, something he thought long dead, duty perhaps, or just a raw instinct against calculated cruelty, sparked within Chatri. He hesitated only a heartbeat. Damn it! He'd sworn off involvement. But the way they moved, the cold intent in their eyes... It reminded him too much of the shadows that haunted the palace, the kind that served men like Minister Vorak. With a low curse, Chatri dropped the rope he was coiling and moved. He didn't charge in wildly. Years of Royal Guard training, buried but not forgotten, guided his steps. He intercepted the man reaching for Marley, not with a clumsy shove, but with a swift, precise block, redirecting the man's momentum. The thug stumbled, surprised. Before he could recover, Chatri flowed into the ancient rhythms of Muay Boran. A hard elbow strike, delivered with blinding speed, caught the first man under the jaw. He crumpled. The other two turned, startled by the sudden effective intervention. They drew short knives, their eyes narrowing. Professionals indeed. Chatri felt a grim satisfaction mixed with weary resignation. So much for staying hidden. He met their charge, his body a whirlwind of controlled aggression. Blocks, parries, devastating knee strikes to the ribs, a sharp kick that sent one attacker staggering back, clutching his wrist. Chatri didn't fight like a brawler. He fought like a weapon honed for a single purpose, neutralization. He disarmed the second man with a painful wrist lock, and a final decisive strike sent him sprawling beside his companion. The third, seeing his fellows down so quickly by this unexpected labourer, hesitated, then turned and fled into the crowd. Chatri stood breathing slightly harder, the familiar adrenaline singing faintly in his veins. He looked at the downed men, then at the terrified young woman huddled near the stall. Pim rushed over, checking on her friend. "Marley, are you hurt? Who were those men?" Marley shook her head, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know." Chatri knew better. Men like that didn't attack random villagers. They had a target, and they wouldn't give up. He grabbed Marley's arm, his grip firm but not rough. "We have to go, now." Go where? Who are you?" she stammered, pulling back slightly. "There's no time. They'll be back, or they'll send others. Trust me," he urged, his voice low and urgent. He glanced at Pim. "Tell no one you saw anything. Forget this happened." Pim looked from Marley's pale face to Chatri's grim determination, then nodded quickly, understanding the unspoken danger. Chatri pulled Marley away from the docks, melting into the labyrinthine alleys heading towards the river's edge, where small hidden canals offered escape routes only locals knew well. He half-dragged, half-guided her towards a narrow, dilapidated long-tail boat hidden beneath overgrown palms. "Get in," he commanded, pushing the boat into the muddy water. She hesitated, looking back towards the life she knew. "But my home." "There is no home for you now," Chatri said flatly, shoving her gently into the boat and jumping in after her. He poled them quickly away from the bank, navigating the narrow, stinking clong, the sounds of the main river fading behind them. The stench of stagnant water and refuse filled the air, a stark contrast to the earlier scent of lotus blossoms. They travelled in silence for a while, the only sounds the rhythmic splash of the pole and the distant city hum. Marley huddled in the boat, shivering despite the humid air. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows lengthened, Chatri guided the boat into a dense thicket of water hyacinths near an crumbling, forgotten chedi, its spire barely visible above the jungle canopy. It was remote, unlikely to be searched immediately. He secured the boat, then turned to face her in the dim light. His voice was hard. "All right, no more games. Who are you, really? And why does someone want you badly enough to send palace-level thugs after a simple village girl?" Marley looked up at him, her eyes luminous with unshed tears, but also a flicker of something else, resolve. She took a deep breath. My real name is Anong." She reached inside her blouse and pulled out a small, intricately carved jade amulet suspended on a simple cord. It depicted a white elephant, a symbol of royalty. I was, Princess Anong, youngest daughter of His Majesty." Chatri stared, first at the amulet, then at her face, seeing past the simple clothes to the underlying fineness of her features, the innate poise she couldn't quite suppress. "Princess? Here?" His mind reeled. It explained the professional attackers, the desperate need to silence her. But why was she hiding here? And then a cold dread washed over him as the pieces clicked into place. There was only one man in the court, ruthless enough and ambitious enough to hunt down a hidden princess. A man whose machinations had already cost Chatri everything. Minister Vorak. Chatri breathed, the name tasting like bile. "This is his doing, isn't it?" Anong flinched at the name, but nodded slowly. He never approved of my mother. After she passed away, the threats began. Loyal retainers smuggled me out of the palace years ago. I thought I was safe here. Chatri leaned back against the boat's rough timber, a bitter laugh escaping him. Safe? No one was safe from Vorak's reach. And fate, it seemed, had a truly twisted sense of humour. The man who had ruined his life was now threatening the life of a princess he had just saved. His quiet, solitary existence was shattered. He was entangled once more in the deadly games of the court, bound by an instinct he couldn't deny to protect the vulnerable young woman before him. "He framed me," Chatri said quietly, more to himself than to her. "Made me the scapegoat for one of his schemes years ago. Cost me my position, my honour." He looked at Anong, his gaze hardening with renewed purpose. "It seems our enemy is the same, and running won't be enough." They needed sanctuary, somewhere Vorak wouldn't easily look. Only one place came to mind, the remote forest temple where Ajahn Kai resided. His old mentor, a former Royal Guard captain famed for his wisdom and martial skill, had retreated from the world years ago, disillusioned by the court's intrigues. If anyone could offer guidance, or at least temporary safety, it was him. The journey was arduous. They abandoned the boat and travelled overland, sticking to jungle paths and avoiding villages. Chatri moved with the quiet competence of his old training, finding edible routes, identifying safe water sources, reading the signs of the forest. Anong, though clearly unused to such hardship, showed surprising resilience. She rarely complained, her initial fear replaced by quiet determination. She learned quickly, mimicking his caution, conserving her energy. During brief rests under the oppressive canopy, they spoke haltingly. Chatri revealed little of his own past, beyond the bare fact of Vorak's betrayal. Anong spoke of her mother, her brief, sheltered life in the palace, and the fear that had been her constant companion since fleeing. A fragile trust began to form between them, forged in shared danger and mutual reliance. Chatri found himself admiring her inner strength, the core of steel beneath her gentle exterior. She, in turn, saw past his gruffness to the unwavering protectiveness, the innate sense of honour he tried so hard to deny. One evening, huddled by a small, smokeless fire, Anong tended a deep scratch on Chatri's arm, a memento from navigating thorny undergrowth. Her touch was gentle, hesitant. "You were a royal guard," she stated softly, not quite a question. Your movements, they are not those of a simple labourer. Chatri didn't deny it. A long time ago. Why did you help me? Back at the docks. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the directness. Couldn't stand by. Those men, they were vermin. You risked everything. For a stranger. He met her gaze, his own conflicted. Maybe I owed fate a debt. Or maybe, he admitted gruffly, I just hate Vorak. After several days, they reached the foothills where Ajahn Kai's forest temple lay hidden, nestled near the evocative vine-choked ruins of what might have once been part of a larger complex like Wat Chai Wathanaram, its ancient stones whispering secrets to the wind. Ajahn Kai, clad in simple saffron robes, his face serene but his eyes sharp as ever, met them at the dilapidated gate. He studied Chatri intently, then his gaze fell upon Anong, lingering on the jade elephant amulet she now wore openly. Recognition dawned in the old monk's eyes. He bowed his head slightly. The king's daughter. And Chatri, my wayward student. It seems the shadows of the palace stretch far indeed. He gestured them inside. Come, you are safe here for now. Within the temple's simple walls, over weak tea and rice gruel, the story unfolded fully. Ajahn Kai listened patiently, his expression grim, as Anong recounted Vorak's threats and Chatri explained his own history with the minister. Kai confirmed their fears. Vorak's influence had grown. He was subtly positioning his family, eliminating potential rivals, consolidating power. Anong, representing a lineage tied to factions Vorak opposed, was a loose end he needed to tie up permanently. Chatri's disgrace, Kai revealed, had been necessary to cover up Vorak's involvement in a failed poisoning attempt on a rival noble years prior. Vorak is cunning, Kai warned. Returning to the palace now without irrefutable proof and powerful allies would be suicide for you both. He looked at Chatri. Your skills are sharp, boy, but Vorak commands many guards, some loyal only to his coin. Then what can we do? Anong asked, her voice laced with despair. We wait, we watch, and we prepare, Kai said calmly. Vorak thrives in darkness. We must bring his deeds into the light. Days turned into weeks under Ajahn Kai's protection. Chatri resumed his old training routines under his mentor's watchful eye, honing his Muay Boran, regaining the sharp focus he had let dull. He taught Anong basic self-defense, simple blocks and escapes, impressed by her quick mind and determination. In the quiet evenings, amidst the serene ruins, their bond deepened. The shared purpose, the enforced proximity, chipped away at Chatri's reserve and Anong's caution. He saw the princess beneath the survivor. She saw the honourable warrior beneath the cynic. Hope arrived in the form of Pim. Using a network of trusted market contacts loyal to her family, she managed to get a message to the temple. She brought news from Ayutthaya. Vorak was growing bolder, planning a lavish display of influence during the upcoming Loy Krathong festival. More importantly, Pim had risked much to retrieve a small lacquer box. Anong had been forced to leave behind, a box containing correspondence between Vorak and the very assassins he had hired years ago to silence palace rivals, letters Anong's mother had secretly intercepted and hidden. It wasn't conclusive proof against him for targeting Anong, but it exposed his methods, his ruthlessness, his long history of treachery. Ajahn Kai examined the letters. This changes things. This, combined with Princess Anong's testimony and what my own quiet inquiries have revealed about Vorak's recent movements, it might be enough. But the timing, the presentation, must be perfect. A plan began to form, audacious and fraught with peril. They would use the Loy Krathong festival, the night when the city celebrated by floating krathongs laden with candles and incense on the river. The crowds, the noise, the spectacle would provide cover for their return to Ayutthaya. Anong, somehow, had to reach the king or the council of ministers during the royal viewing of the festivities, presenting the evidence and her testimony. Chatri's role was clear. Get her there and deal with Vorak's inevitable security. It's dangerous, Chatri stated, looking at Anong. Vorak will have guards everywhere, especially around the royal pavilion. I know, Anong replied, her gaze steady. But we cannot hide forever. My father, the court, they need to know the truth. Ajahn Kai, can you alert any loyal guards still within the palace? Those who might oppose Vorak if given the chance? Kai nodded slowly. There are a few who remember true loyalty. I will send word through channels Vorak cannot trace, but the main effort rests on you too. The night of Loy Krathong arrived, transforming Ayutthaya into a mesmerizing spectacle of light and water. Thousands of flickering Krathongs drifted down the Chow Phraya, carrying away misfortunes. Prayers whispered on the warm night air. The air thrummed with music, laughter, and the scent of jasmine and incense. Under the cover of the joyous chaos, Chatri and Anong, disguised in simple festival attire provided by Pim, slipped back into the city. Ajahn Kai had remained behind, his role now to activate his contacts. Pim met them near the palace walls, her face tight with worry, but her eyes determined. "The royal family is watching from the grand pavilion overlooking the river," she whispered, pointing. "Vorak is at the king's side. His personal guards are everywhere." Chatri scanned the area, noting the placement of guards, the flow of the crowd. "All right, Pim, stay back, stay safe. Anong, stay close to me until we reach the pavilion steps. Then you must go alone. Find the captain Kai spoke of, Captain Surya. Give him the signal." The signal was a specific fold in the handkerchief she carried. "I will create a diversion. Go when you see your chance." Anong nodded, clutching the lacquer box containing the letters beneath her shawl. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her expression was resolute. Chatri took a deep breath, centering himself. He met Anong's eyes one last time, a silent promise passing between them. Then he turned and melted into the thickest part of the crowd near a side entrance heavily guarded by men bearing Vorak's insignia. He bumped deliberately into one of the guards, a large, sneering man. "Watch where you're going, peasant." The guard snarled, shoving him back. Chatri didn't apologize. Instead, he looked the guard dead in the eye. "Men like you shouldn't wear the king's colours. You serve only greed." It was the spark needed. The guard, incensed, swung a clumsy fist. Chatri evaded it easily and retaliated with a blindingly fast sequence of Moiboran strikes, elbow, knee, a disabling kick. The guard went down hard. His companions reacted instantly, drawing swords. The crowd gasped and surged back, creating the space Chatri needed. "Vorak's dogs!" Chatri shouted, drawing their focus entirely onto himself. "Does your master pay you well enough to die for his corruption?" He met their charge, a whirlwind of motion. He fought not to kill, but to incapacitate, his movements fluid and devastatingly effective. He recognized some faces, men he had once trained alongside in the Royal Guard, now bought by Vorak's silver. A pang of regret hit him, but he couldn't falter. He used the environment, ducking behind stalls, using the crowd's confusion as momentary shields. Fists flew, steel flashed, but Chatri, driven by righteous fury and the need to protect Anong, was unstoppable. He systematically dismantled Vorak's personal security detail in a stunning display of martial prowess, leaving them groaning on the ground as loyalist palace guards, alerted perhaps by Kai's message or the commotion, began to converge. Meanwhile, Anong used the chaos. Seeing Chatri fully engaged, she slipped through the thinned cordon, her small figure easily lost in the throng pressing towards the royal pavilion. She spotted Captain Surya near the steps, a stern-faced man known for his integrity. Heart-pounding, she caught his eye and subtly displayed the folded handkerchief. Surya's eyes widened slightly in understanding. He gave a barely perceptible nod and created a small momentary gap in the formal guard line. Anong slipped through. She walked, head held high despite the trembling in her legs, directly towards the raised platform where the king sat with his court, Minister Vorak standing smugly beside him. Guards moved to intercept her, but Captain Surya subtly blocked them. Vorak turned, annoyance flashing across his smooth features at the interruption. Then his eyes widened in shock and fury as he recognized the young woman approaching. "You!" he hissed, stepping forward. "Stop her!" Vorak commanded his remaining nearby guards, but Anong didn't falter. She reached the foot of the platform, knelt respectfully before the king, ignoring Vorak entirely. "Your Majesty," she began, her voice clear and steady despite the fear clawing at her throat. "Forgive this intrusion on this auspicious night. I am Anong, your daughter, and I bring proof of treason." A collective gasp went through the assembled court. The king stared, his face a mixture of astonishment and dawning recognition. Vorak went pale, sputtering denials. "Lies! An impostor! Seize her!" "I think not, Minister," Captain Surya said firmly, stepping forward with several of his own loyal men, effectively cutting off Vorak's guards. Anong opened the lacquer box. Minister Vorak has sought my death for years, Your Majesty, fearing the influence my mother's memory holds. He drove me from the palace, forcing me into hiding. These letters," she held them up, "detail his methods, his use of assassins against others who opposed him. He is a blight upon this court, a traitor to the crown." Vorak lunged towards her, desperate to silence her, but Chatri, having subdued the last of the guards outside, vaulted onto the platform edge, landing lightly between Vorak and Anong. He stood, breathing hard, his simple clothes torn, but his eyes blazing with defiance as he faced his old nemesis. "Your reign of shadows ends tonight, Vorak," Chatri declared, his voice ringing with authority. The king looked from Anong's earnest face to the damning letters to the suddenly cornered Vorak and finally to the imposing figure of Chatri, whose fighting prowess had just been vividly demonstrated. He saw the truth. His expression hardened. "Minister Vorak," the king's voice was cold steel, "you will answer for these accusations. Guards, take him." Vorak, seeing his power evaporate, seeing the loyal guards closing in, finally broke. He snarled, protesting his innocence. But it was useless. He was seized and dragged away, his smooth facade crumbling into terrified rage. Silence fell over the pavilion, broken only by the distant festival sounds and the crackling torches. The king rose and descended the steps, approaching Anong. He looked closely at her face, then at the jade amulet. A flicker of deep emotion crossed his features, regret, perhaps, and love. "Anong," he murmured, his voice thick, "my daughter, forgive your father for failing to protect you sooner." He then turned to Chatri, who stood silently, respectfully. "And you, warrior, you fought like one of my finest guards. Who are you?" Before Chatri could answer, Ajahn Kai appeared quietly at the edge of the platform, having slipped through during the final confrontation. He bowed low. "Your Majesty, this is Chatri, once one of your most promising royal guards, until Minister Vorak falsely accused him to cover his own crimes. He has protected the princess with his life and honor." The king nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "Justice has been long delayed, it seems. Your name will be cleared, Chatri, your honor restored. Ayutthaya owes you both a great debt." Weeks later, the dust had settled. Vorak, his crimes fully exposed, faced the king's justice. Anong, no longer Mali the villager, was Princess Anong once more, navigating the complex currents of court life with a quiet wisdom gained from her years in hiding. She was finding her place, cautiously accepting the support of those loyal to her father and her mother's memory. Chatri's name was officially cleared, his rank notionally restored, though he politely declined an immediate return to active guard duty. The palace felt alien after his years of exile and the intensity of recent events. He needed time. One cool evening, under a sky washed clean by the monsoon rains, Anong found him standing on a palace balcony overlooking the gardens, the scent of night-blooming jasmine heavy in the air,